All right, I think we are ready to rock and roll. I know a few other people have signed up to join, and they will jump on when they're available to jump on, but I'm not going to hold back on starting us off on this great topic. So welcome everybody to June 14th. We are talking today about challenges that we're facing, even smart, motivated professionals, just like you, all of you on this call, that we face that hold us back and keep us struggling to get that promotion and that raise that we know we're worth. So I want to welcome you all to the call, and we're going to be using the chat function if you'd like to participate via the chat function in Zoom, or you can unmute yourself to add comments. I'm interested to know what you'd like to get out of the call today, if anything in particular. So if there's something you definitely know you want to get out of the call today, please note that in the chat or unmute yourself and share that with me. So for today's call, as you're getting ready to put that in there, what I'm going to be doing is sharing with you a lot of things that I've learned. I'm going to share a little story about what I've gone through to get promotions and raises in the past, how I support people now, share 3 of the common challenges that I often experience that other people are having, and I'm really going to share high value content with you here today. So hopefully it's all right with you that at the end of this, I share with you some next steps on how to take this even further, because today's call will be a super high value, and definitely want to support you even further if we can. So we'll talk about that at the end of the webinar here as well. So any questions, comments? I'm trying to see if there are any comments. I don't see any. All right. I'm just going to start the chat function just so you can see where it is in case you want to make a comment at some point. So let's get into this. So to start with, I'm going to share, here's our agenda for today. So I'm going to, again, like I said, I'm going to share with you some challenges that I faced and what I did to move beyond those things. 3 of the challenges that keep us struggling, what they are, why they're a problem, and how we can solve for them. And then I'll share with you some ideas around what you can do next. And we're going to just jump right into this. So I've shared this with you before, my mission and vision. A lot of you know this about me, that it's my mission to serve others through coaching and consulting so that they can see and elevate their own potential and achieve their own goals. And my vision is to support successful women, just like you on this call, in business, in creating maximum success in your life, because the world needs you to deliver the positive impact you've been called to make. So that's my why. That's what I bring to the table. That's what I bring to the table today. I'm going to black out the screen for a moment, and I want to share with you where I was before, though, because I haven't always been in this place. So maybe you can relate to this. I started in a role accidentally and found out I really loved it. And this is probably 8 years ago. I've got a wide variety of background and experience, but I'm going to tell you a story about succession that I went through in the last 8 years. I started a position accidentally at a company in a learning and development role. And I say accidentally because I had no background doing it. I came in a 6-month contract just to help someone. What I did in that 6 months was I built up a reputation so that people knew they could come to me to be the problem solver. So I don't know if anyone on this call has seen my video about this codependency notion and being the problem solver for people, and feeling really good about that. I know Jamie has, I can see she's on the call, and it's definitely something that I struggled with a lot early in my career, is being this problem solver for other people. It did help me, though, in certain ways. And I will say that one of the solutions is being selective and smart and savvy about where to be the helper in situations. And I got smarter along the way. But for a while, I used to sit there and wonder why people, so I got asked to stay at the company because they liked the value I was providing, and gratefully took the role because it had benefits and everything that I was looking for. Great company. And I would sit there and do lots of great work for years, and people around me would be getting promoted and promoted and promoted, and I would continually compare myself to them and think, well, I'm better than them, or I've done more than them, or I'm capable of just as much as they are. How come I'm not being promoted? Can you relate to that on the call? So anyone relate to that feeling of not getting seen? So what I started to do is start to look at, well, what maybe were some people doing? Oh, Kat is saying, yes, she can relate to that. Yep. So what is it that people were doing that I wasn't doing? Well, there were some certain things like influencing, like not being afraid to ask, and being really clear in their plan. And so over time and by accident and through a lot of trial and error, I learned how to move forward because I was in a position where when I was brought in, my salary was at $50,000, which for a lot of people is a really great wage. But for the work I was doing, $50,000 was probably, um, boy, it was probably, I want to say, 70% behind where it should have been when I got hired in. And I worked my way through up to a point where I was earning up to $120,000 in an 8-year period. Okay. So I did that for myself. No one did that for me. And I want to share with you some of the ways that I went about doing that. Are you interested in hearing? Okay, great. Great. Because it was painful. It was a lot of, where do I go? I'm afraid to talk about money. I'm not worth it. Obviously, they don't think I'm going to be able to do this work. And then not knowing how to have this real clarity. And so today we're going to talk about these things. So the first challenge that keeps us struggling is the fear of money and talking about money. If you've got a fear of talking about money, let me know. Put that in the chat, or if you're on video, you can just wave at me so I know that this is something you relate to. So it's interesting, right? To me anyway, that in my experience, it's easier for us to talk with our kids about sex. It's easier for us to talk about politics. It's easier for us to talk about our weight sometimes than it is to talk about money. Why is that, right? It's kind of crazy that for so many people, it's so hard to talk about money and ask questions about money, even when it's the thing that propels us and keeps us afloat in being able to talk about any other topic. We have to have money in order to be participating in society and eating, right? But we get really afraid to ask about compensation. We get really afraid to ask other people what they're earning. I had a colleague once where I worked prior to my last role, where she was a great experienced person. And she had been there many years, and she often trained in new people. And at one point, I became her peer. She trained me in, and I became her peer. And she realized at some point that I was earning more than her, and a lot of other people were earning more than her. Well, why is that? Why is that? One of the things that happens is when we stay in a company a long time, we start making assumptions that people are taking care of us. And that's really gets into the second point I want to make is we're not proactively influencing. So fear of talking about money and then not proactively influencing put this woman in a place where she started to get really, really angry and burned out because she was seeing other people were earning more money than her. She had seniority, she had expertise, yet she wasn't getting the wage that she wanted. And so it was up to her to start influencing and asking for that raise. And she actually eventually did go in and ask for the raise, but not after she kind of discredited her character a lot by complaining a lot about the fact that she knew publicly that she wasn't earning as much as other people. So I don't know if you've ever experienced something like that, but it can be, we have to be savvy and elegant about how we talk about money because we want to take emotions out of it. And that's one of the things that this former colleague of mine displayed was a real emotional attachment to the value of the money versus the money that she was helping the company create and retain and earn. So that's another thing we'll talk about. So this second mistake, not proactively influencing, we'll talk quite a bit about this one too, because there are really easy ways to consistently get active on influence. And then the third way is that we're not clear. And that gets into this consistency. And that's something I really am going to be talking about a little further down, is the lack of clarity. And you can see that I place these in 3, 2, 1 order. Now, you might think that fear of talking about money is the thing that's really holding you back. How many of you think that that's the number one thing holding you back? Anybody? For Andy, it is. Okay. I don't know if Jamie or Kat, if that's something for you, but really it's the thing we can probably get over the most quickly. And the thing that's going to take longer to do, though, is getting that consistent clarity in what you're trying to create. So really, in my experience, the talking about money thing, we can get through that. It's that influence and that consistent clarity and our accountability that's going to really move the needle on getting that raise and getting that promotion and getting that notice. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about fear of money. It's again, like I said before, it's interesting that we don't like talking about this. And some of the reasons why, let me know if you can relate to these at all. Some of the reasons why it comes from a bit of a scarcity mindset. So when we've got a fear of money and talking about it, there's usually something that could stem maybe from our childhood, even a fear of there never being enough, right? You might have had experiences as a child with maybe parents even negatively fighting over money or discussing how there wasn't enough money and how there'd be lack. I know in my life I experienced that quite a bit because I'll tell you that the local church, apparently, my mom would say they had extra food. They just happened to have extra food that they wanted to give us, which was my mother's sweet way of taking charity from our church basement food shelf. So there's this fear that there's never going to be enough. There's also this fear that, oh, Jamie said that not proactively influencing is her number one. We'll get to that, Jamie, next. Okay, so if we need to focus on what we have now versus what we could have in the future. So there's this fear that if, basically we don't know what we could have in the future, and that is absolutely true. You know, if we just focus on what we have now, we can control that. So the future is something we can't control, and absolutely asking for money, you're at someone else's whim if they're going to give it to you or not, right? So if we're in this place where we don't ask about it, yeah, sure, we're going to have the same wage, the same income happening for us for a while. Some people don't want to ask for a raise or can't ask for a raise for a couple of additional reasons I'll share with you now. So the fears that really come into play here is that when we're fearing, can you guys see the screen okay? I have a couple of little mini screens open. I'm not sure if they black out anything, or can you see the PowerPoint okay? Yeah, okay, great. All right. So when we fear that there'll never be enough, what we're really doing is putting ourselves in a mindset that the loss and that emotional loss is going to be way more painful than any value we gain by trying to find new sources of money or asking about money or talking about money. So the pain, we're trying to avoid emotional pain by not talking about money. I don't know if you guys can relate, but I just went through a personal budgeting exercise at home to look at just how we're going to figure out a family vacation this summer. And my dear husband, who I love dearly, was like, please just don't even show it to me. I just don't even want to see it, right? So and it wasn't even like bad. It just didn't want to see it. So there's this fear, and it can be very rational, right? But it can also be irrational, that I don't want to think about what we don't have. And if I don't talk about it and don't look at it, it doesn't have to be true. So I can just pretend it's not there and we'll just go on a vacation. Well, that's not a really smart way to take a vacation. Another thing, fear of talking about money or asking about money, is we don't want to take a chance on the future because we know we've got the security now. So our risk tolerance tells us, I don't want to risk not having a paycheck in the future. I don't want to get fired because I don't want to seem greedy. Does that seem like that could potentially resonate with anybody, right? Like, I don't want to seem greedy. There's like this thing I believe in Western society where we are really told that money can be the basis of all evil, and that if we are looking for money, we're greedy, and if we're talking about money, there's like a shame element put onto money. And there's this other fear, kind of this imposter syndrome fear, that I can't ask for a raise because there's going to be 10 other people who would be willing to do my job for less money than I'm making now, right? So there's all of these, and Kat says, yep, for her, there's this fear of being greedy. She says in the chat, she's not terribly motivated by money, and she feels like she has enough for her lifestyle right now. Okay, that's good, but probably there's room for your company to pay you more money. Just because you don't have kids now doesn't mean you shouldn't be paid what you're worth, and ask for what you're worth. And we can talk about that more, Kat. Yeah. So I've got another big topic in this area. I'm going to pull it up later, but before I go to it, I want to walk through just a little bit more about how we can get over these basic fears about money. All right. So some of the ways that I know to get out of the scarcity mindset and to shift into one of possibility to one of prosperity and potential is in expressing gratitude for what you do have. That's a number one way to get out of a scarcity mindset, to get out of any kind of negative mindset, is to express gratitude for what you do have. A second thing is thinking about abundance instead of scarcity. So if you're afraid of money that you may not have things to pay for your car or for food or for your housing, that could be a very real fear that you really need to take care of. Absolutely. But because I don't want you to think that I'm being flippant about having money, because we have to pay for a roof over our heads. We have to pay for transportation, for food, right? Those are things that we're obligated to pay for. But if those things are taken care of and you have gratitude for what you have right now, maybe you can think about abundance in other areas. So taking some risks in other areas. So if you have a fear of money, experiment in taking risks that are not going to put your home, your groceries, and your transportation in danger, right? So that's a way to start to change that mindset and see where you can find a little bit of success in thinking about money a little differently. Another thing that has helped me quite a bit is optimizing when I'm thinking about money. So how many of you have ever gotten to a point where you're looking at your bank account balance and you're like, holy cow, how am I gonna cover X? I don't know what X could be, but like, what did I do, right? That's probably the worst time to start thinking about money decisions in a way. I mean, obviously, if you're at that point, you have to work on it. But making bigger decisions with your money, when you're in that place, you're going to be making decisions out of short-term, on a really short-term basis. They're going to be adrenaline, emotional-based decisions, and probably not the most fact-based strategic decisions you can make. So it's better to actually think about your finances when your paycheck has come in and you're abundant, or maybe your annual bonus has come in and you're abundant with money. That's the time that is optimal to sit down and make some real rational decisions about what to be doing with your money, how to budget it, where to spend it, and have fun with it, versus when you're in crisis mode. Absolutely, you have to handle things when you're in crisis mode, but it's not going to be the best time for you to make decisions about money and talk about money. So I'm sure you guys can relate to that. That is not a fun time to talk about money when you don't have it, right? So shift your thinking there. With promotion and with raises, in both these areas, I like to avoid comparisons. And that is because I am not the same person as someone else. My skills, my abilities, and my potential are far different from someone else's. And so when I compare myself to others, I get really narrow and focus on attributes that maybe aren't the right ones or the most important ones. So for example, someone else might have an MBA degree. I do not have an MBA degree. I have an MA degree, but now I'm going to compare myself to someone with an MBA degree and say, well, I know they have that degree, but I'm better at this than they are. Your motive behind it just becomes very minimized. Your motive becomes very small. You're just being really reactive and emotional when you compare yourself to others. So that's where comparing yourself to your own abilities, to your own potential is more important and will get you away from this fear of talking about money. And of course, admit you're afraid. It's okay. It's okay to be afraid to talk about money because we really, generations now hopefully are being taught about money, but a lot of people I know who were born in the 70s and 80s, people just didn't talk about money. And they don't know how to manage it necessarily. So if you don't, that's okay, and practice. So some things that you can do to get over fear of money, and this is why I think this is the easiest one to solve for, is because you can practice how to talk about it with a boss. You can practice how to introduce to your boss the concept of getting a promotion. And it's, a few conversations and you can do that. You can do it. And even though you're afraid, you're going to ask for it anyway. So I'm going to pause there. Any comments or questions anyone has around these fears? I've got one more big fear. It's the spider in the closet. Actually, just last night, I had one of those giant millipedes run across the book I was about to pick up. All right. So here's the other fear I want to make sure that we talk about, because it's probably the most important one, is that we feel we aren't worthy of wealth and success. So this happens for a lot of people. We feel we're just not worthy of it, and so why would we ask for it? So how can you raise your own sense of self-worth if this happens to be you? And sometimes this might be the problem under the problem under the problem that you need to really fix. So if you solve for this thing, it might fix a few other things, right? There might be some additive effect here. So with self-worth, how you can start to raise your own value is by providing value to others and feeling valuable yourself. How do you do that? This is about being of service and giving without expecting anything in return. A lot of people talk about this as being an altruistic giver, but it also means being kind to others and just being kind to yourself. So one way you can raise your own sense of self-value and self-worth is to be kind to others and to yourself. Another way is to keep your promises. I know with a couple of you, we were talking about keeping promises yesterday. Keeping promises are a great way to start to build trust for yourself. So do you trust yourself, and do others trust you? By keeping your promises, you're going to have a higher sense of self-worth, and others are going to see you as someone who's trustworthy and successful and worthy. And a third way is being accountable. And when we're accountable, what happens is we're not living in a world of blame. So if we feel like we're not worthy, we're not successful, a lot of the times it's really easy to take it out on other people and say, well, it's their fault. It's that person's fault I didn't get the promotion. It's the government's fault I didn't get a raise. It's, other faults. And so having personal accountability, keeping promises to yourself, and providing value and kindness to others and yourself, these are ways to increase your self-worth if that's something that could be behind your fear of money and talking about money and asking for money. Is that resonating with anybody? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, I thought so too, because it's scary. It can be scary to ask for money, for sure. All right. I'm going to move on to our second challenge, which is not proactively influencing. And I know, Jamie, you said this is something that potentially is of value for you in particular. So what is influence? It's power or capacity of causing an effect that is indirect or intangible. I think it can also be direct and tangible. I like to think about influence that way, but I think it's the results of influence that are direct and tangible, but the act of influencing is a little more indirect and intangible. So influence means a couple different things. And one of the things that I like to think about is if I was going to evaluate myself on my level of influence, one of the ways I do that is by looking at, okay, if I give someone my advice or my opinion, one, do they listen to me? Okay, that's one degree of influence. Two, do they share it with others? Okay, there's a second degree of influence. And three, do they actually implement advice or information I've given them? And four, do they come back to me and proactively ask me for more advice and information without me having to pursue them, right? So are they listening to me? Do they share it with others? Are they implementing what I've shared with them? And do they come back to me for more information? Those are the four key levels of influence that I look at to judge where I am in a situation. And it really matters a lot because when we're in a place of looking for a promotion and a raise, we often assume that others are noticing us. I mean, we're the center of the universe, each one of us, right? Right here, center of the universe. And we think that people are thinking about us all the time. Well, they're not, because you know yourself, you're not thinking about other people all the time. 99% of the time you're thinking about yourself, right? Let's be honest. Maybe the other 1% of the time you're thinking about what other people think about you. Right? So when we're not proactively influencing, we are losing out on a lot of potential to create change, a lot of potential to create change not only for the business, but for ourselves. And so really influential people, what they're doing differently is they're focused on what's in it for me from the other person's perspective. Okay, so thinking about what's in it for my boss, what's in it for my company, what's in it for other people, and looking at it from their perspective. So Kat just asked a question, how do you balance influence with sounding pompous? That's something she struggles with. Okay, so if you're talking about influence and giving advice without sounding pompous, here's what I would say, Kat, assuming I understand you correctly, it's your motive. So I would check your motive and your level of emotional intelligence in something. Being a know-it-all. Kat, I see that. Yep. Okay. So being a know-it-all and influence. So there's two pieces there that I like to talk about. One is motive. So is your motive in a sincere place? Are you trying to be of service and support without trying to get some kind of gain? Because there are a lot of people out there, and I'm sure you can imagine a couple right now who say things and do things so that they can get, hey, look at me, attention, hey, look at me, hey, look at me. And they're like craving attention, right? And their motive is attention grabbing, it's money, right? It's, I've got the power, right? So that's their motive behind it. But if your motive is to be supportive to others and to be giving and sharing what you know, that's a completely different thing because you're coming from a place of humility and service and love. Now, the other piece of being called a know-it-all, and I think women who have opinions, and there's all women on the call right now, so I'll just talk about women, and it's with influence and being a know-it-all, Women can often be told that for a lot of different reasons. um, there's a lot of studies out there about how people don't like to hear information and opinions from women, and that can be cultural, which is unfortunate. But within a corporation in the United States of America, that's not something we should have to manage through, but sometimes it happens. So being that know-it-all, what I've learned, and I learned this the hard way, Kat, is I got an opportunity to work on my emotional intelligence. And I recommend this to everybody, getting the book that's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by, oh gosh, what is his name? I'm blanking right now. Oh gosh. Anyway, you'll find it at any airport. So Jamie, I know you'll be flying. You can pick it up at the airport. I want to say Bradbury is his last name, but Emotional Intelligence 2.0. So what this means is, how aware are we of how we are showing up in a situation? How savvy are we in understanding the impact of Travis Bradbury? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So how are we at knowing the effect or impact we're having when we walk into a room? And so, Kat, for you, when you walk into a room, sometimes we get to do this thing where we get to decide, is it the right time? Is it the right place? Is it the right person to share the information, right? So sometimes we'll be in a situation, and I've had this happen in really big meetings with senior executives, where I've decided, you know what, I need to address this with this person, but it's not the time or place, because the people in the room would, it would be very distracting. It could get emotional, and I don't want to show up and have people think I'm being emotional about something. It's not the right time because the agenda's really tight. We've got all these people in the room, and it's just not something I'm going to talk about right now. But if you're talking about clarity to supporting with decision making, just knowing your audience and bringing them along with you, because Kat, I've met you, you're a really smart person. And what I would say is, probably you make 20 logical leaps because you're an expert and people can't keep up with you. And so, as annoying as that might be, as a great leader, one of the things you get to learn is that patience and resilience with bringing people along on the story with you. And once you do that, there's probably less misunderstanding and more people enjoying who you are, right? So I've gotten that feedback. Oh, that makes sense. Good. Yeah, I've gotten that feedback before, Kat, that people can't keep up with me, and that they misunderstand that and take that as me being a bully or me being too aggressive or know-it-all, and that I'm annoying to them. And what I learned is I just had to slow down. So yeah, so actively influencing. Thinking about what's in it for other people, thinking about how I'm showing up in a way that is presenting me in my best light and my most powerful self, so that I can position myself, again, in a way from humility, but also in knowing my value, right? Because you're all providing a lot of value to your companies, knowing your value, standing in that value, and positioning yourself in a powerful way to get a raise and to get a promotion. That's really what we're talking about with influence here. So, self-evaluate yourself on how influential you are. Are people taking your advice and applying it? Are they listening to you and sharing it? So some ways that I've gone about increasing my influence is volunteering for projects, even those projects that are kind of annoying, right? That you wish you didn't have to volunteer for. But here's the way I would do it, is thinking about, are they high visibility? Are they things that are in alignment with what I want to grow into? And I want to go back a moment also to this concept of comparing myself to others. So when we're looking for a new role and we're thinking about the kinds of things we need to do to get into that new role, being in integrity with that is going to be really important, so that you're not showing up as someone who is out of alignment with who they are. And by that, I mean, think about really how you want people to describe you. If someone was going to write a LinkedIn review for you, and it's going to be a year from now, and you want them to talk about the great skills you have, the abilities you have that are unique to you and what you bring to the table, what would those attributes and skills be? And think about those things as you're working on learning more in your personal development, as you're working on taking on volunteer opportunities. I have in here this influence before and after meetings, right? So what that to me means is building relationships with people, sharing ideas before meetings, following up after meetings. And by that, I don't mean gossip and emotion. It's talking about the potential for what you can employ or deploy, and the potential for what you could do with that, and kind of creating a environment of sponsorship for your ideas, right? And that's a really positive, influential technique that takes a longer amount of time to impact than fear of talking about money. And so that's why this comes as a second item is this influence. So learning, networking, scorecarding, sharing it, and creating sponsor relationships are ways to think about increasing your influence, and absolutely working on your emotional intelligence, thinking about your motives, and thinking about, okay, if no one was looking right now, am I still in alignment with who I want to be? Always checking yourself on your personal integrity. Those are things that people will notice. They also notice bad integrity. It just depends on the company if bad integrity gets rewarded or not. And sometimes it does. We know that that happens. But that's probably, if you're on this call, you don't want to, you're not looking for some secret trick to get through something with bad integrity. You all want to be in great integrity with who you are. All right. So let's say we're not, one of the things I wanted to bring up here too is something really practical. So if you are going to ask for a raise and you're influencing, and you've been talking about opportunities you've had for new responsibility or new results you've created based on your goals, a really easy way to do that is just with this kind of a quick sentence. And I can share this deck with you afterwards if you would like to keep it. Appreciate the opportunities you've given me. I've been getting great results in those areas, and I've exceeded our goals. Can we please talk about adjusting my salary to reflect this higher level of contribution or responsibility? It's a simple way to start it, right? How does that feel? Is anyone sweating right now, or is that okay? That's an okay thing to do, right? Andy, you're even saying yes. I love it. Good. When we're asking for a raise and a promotion, we want to keep our focus on our accomplishments, not our finances. If you've ever managed someone, I've had this happen where they've come in and they shared with me their hardships. And some companies do have hardship funds to help employees who are going through a temporary difficult situation or hard time, and that's fabulous. But trying to leverage and influence using a hardship technique for something that's outside of the actual contribution you're creating in your role is not very effective, and will probably result in getting a no from your boss. And so I don't know if you've ever experienced that or had an employee try to use that kind of technique. It's just not good. So talk about your accomplishments and not your finances. And then what do you do if the answer could be maybe or no? So we're going to talk about this next, about when we are influencing well, when we have a plan in place, what do we do when the answer is no or maybe? I had a boss once who, for him, he would always say, well, you know, titles don't matter. And I said, well, that's great. I'm glad for you because you happen to have a really big title, that titles don't matter. But to me, they do matter, because when you get a higher title, what you're really doing is, it's not the title. What it is you typically will have a broader scope of influence over a larger piece of the business, over a larger piece of the P&L, and you're going to be able to have different decision-making abilities at a higher level. To me, that's what matters, not the title. And so that's why the words in a title don't matter, but getting promoted does, because typically, like I say, you have more influence, more power, more ability to impact change and the change you want to make at a company, and increase your own visibility, your brand, and what you can do, sharing your gifts with the world in the way you're meant to share them. So that's why we're going to talk about the number one reason why and challenge why even smart, motivated professionals struggle to be promoted and receive a raise. We are not clear and we are inconsistent. So sometimes what happens for a lot of people is we don't really know what we want. We don't have a plan for how to achieve it. We're not measuring the things that really matter, and we are inconsistent in doing it. So Jamie just shared that in her company, a title change has to accompany a raise and vice versa. So it does matter. Okay, thanks, Jamie. That's good. Someone in HR helped you out there by doing that, because not every company has that locked in there. So the reason why I say this is the number one challenge is it's kind of like the money piece of it, the sphere of money. This lack of clarity, we can absolutely do something about it. In the sticky middle is our influence. And if we're consistent and we're clear, we're going to be influencing consistently and with clarity over time, so that when the opportunity comes up, we are ready to have that conversation. We have data. We're very clear on where we want to go, why we want to go there, and how we want to go about doing it. So a lot of companies have succession planning events that happen once a year, where your HR leader, if you're in a larger company, your HR leader and the executive team will sit down and talk about, okay, if somebody wins the lottery, who's the next person to take this place? If so-and-so retires, who's the next person? Or we need to shift roles. And whether you know it or not, that you are sitting somewhere on a piece of paper that shows where you would be within that succession plan. Well, guess what? A great way to take some control over that thing that you don't have a lot of control directly over, but if we think about that indirect influence that you do have, is showing them exactly where you want to be on that piece of paper, right? So getting clear on your goals is number one. Creating a plan. So, and I just said a moment ago, and I really believe this makes a massive difference. It's looking at what are the broader responsibilities I want to have, and having that as your set of goals. So not saying I want to be, so I used to coach a lot of people who wanted to be called strategic account managers. So they wanted to get this title of strategic account manager. I said, okay, well, what does a strategic account manager do that you're not doing right now? And they don't have an answer for that. So they want a title, but they don't know what that consists of doing. And if for you, you're looking for a new title within a promotion, but you don't know what you'd be doing in that new role that's different than today, the impact you'd be providing that's different than today, you don't have clarity, and you don't have the power to go into your boss's office and ask for a promotion or a raise right now. You need to get clear on what's the value you're going to be offering with that promotion. So the second thing to talk about here is measuring what matters and leading indicators. So a leading indicator are behaviors that will, if you do them, lead to great results. And I talked about this yesterday with a few people, is really scorecarding the things that matter. So if you know that your boss has created a volume goal for you, or your boss has created a margin goal or a efficiency goal, something like that, or maybe you are in charge of ensuring that T&E doesn't get out of hand, right? Track how you are performing against that and share it with them regularly. So really know and say to your boss, hey, I think these are the things that really matter in my job that I can control and impact and that I want to create a difference with. I'm going to be measuring these this year and figure out how to quantify and qualify those things, and then have regular conversations to show your boss where you are on those. So again, it's this consistency. It's not a surprise in December, because December is the wrong time to be asking for a raise or promotion. Do you know why? December, budgets are set. December, the talent system is already in place. December is just not going to be a good time for most places. Your company may be different. So your company might have its own budget cycle or promotion cycle. So know that, but be intelligent about your timing for asking for those promotions and raises. But also, if there's just a crisis in your boss's family or a crisis with a customer, just know that that's not a great time to be going in to ask for, to talk about this. So just be emotionally intelligent about how you're showing up to do this. If you have been doing really great work since your salary was last set, absolutely, it's time to ask. One of the things I would also do with clarity is start researching online. So one of the ways I got a 20% raise, I got a 20% raise by going out on salary.com, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, a bunch of different resources. And I looked at what other people were making in a similar position, in a similar zip code, with similar responsibilities and a similar educational background. And guess what I found? I was on there's a bell curve for salaries on salary.com. I was on the lowest end of that bell curve. And so I went in loaded with data, loaded with a chart of the value I'd provided, and loaded with some scenarios that I thought we could look at over a 1 to 3 year period. So I didn't say to my boss, you need to double my salary right now. But I did say, we need to get me over to here. Let's work on it. And I think in this year, this is the number I'd like to get to. So coming with data, knowing what you're worth, is going to be incredibly helpful. And knowing your industry too. So I know the three of you are all in different industries, so knowing what they pay in your industry, but you can find that through your research. And you can ask people about this. So you can ask people, for example, hi Kat. You can ask people, for example, what that you think someone should be earning in this role, or what do they think someone at this company or in this industry should be earning for this. Don't be afraid to ask that. Again, I mean, I know we'd prefer to talk about politics and our weight or whatever, talk about the birds and the bees with our kids before we talk about money, but let's get comfortable about it, because if we don't get comfortable about it and we keep it taboo, we're never going to be able to ask about it in a way where we have our power. We're coming at it from a place of knowledge, security, and ownership, and not emotions. Because if you let your emotions get in the way of it, it's going to be detrimental for you. So factoring in the things that are going on with your company. But prior to that, really the work you get to do is getting clear on what you want to do, measuring what matters, talking about it frequently, and bringing in data to support you in what you'd like to see in the future with either a raise or a promotion. And I find that we often think it's that fear of money and talking about money. We often think it's our lack of influence or our bad brand that's holding us back. But truly, it's our own accountability, our own hard work, and our own lack of clarity that holds us back from getting what we're worth, asking for those promotions, etc. So what can you do? I'll summarize for you guys. Have a clear vision and have a plan that you are consistently following for yourself in your career. Do any of you have a career roadmap right now? No. Okay, so where you'd like to be in the future, and that could be doing the same role if you love the role you're doing, but maybe increasing responsibility, or maybe working on certain special projects, or maybe getting a team underneath you to support you in doing some of the tactical work so you can do more strategic work, right? So just thinking about where you'd like to go. Develop your influence and really think about, and I want you to all do this, think about, are people really listening to you and applying the things you're sharing with them? Are you actually influential? And if you're feeling like you could improve that, step back and get more emotionally aware, do that emotional intelligence quiz and understand how you're being influential and how you can improve that. And if you've got a fear of talking about money, take a hard look at yourself for a quick second and move on. It's okay to talk about it. And by women not talking about it, we're only doing our own selves damage. So it's not emotional. Talking about money is not emotional. It is data, it is information. We can talk about it without getting emotional. And a way to work on that is to practice. So practice what you're going to say when you ask for a promotion. Practice what you're going to say when you ask for a raise. So this is all about some of these sabotaging behaviors and our mindsets that we have around scarcity, our mindsets that we have around, can we blame others for our situation or not, and where do we take that real ownership and accountability. And if any one of you would like to get more support and have a powerful coach standing by your side, I've got an offer for you guys if you want to get even more clear on your career plan. I've got a special offer for $97 to jump on a call. We're going to talk about a personal strategy map for you to get started on your path for achieving a promotion and raise, and what a 90-day support plan could look like too. So would that be helpful to anybody? Yeah, you think so? Kat, how could that be helpful to you? She's typing. She's typing. I have to say, my own coach is so supportive of me, and when I don't know what I can do to get over some little tiny piece of self-doubt, or if sometimes there's just a fog of indecision, and when I'm feeling that way, my coach can stand behind me and powerfully hold me up and show me where I can have more clarity and more success. And it's usually just little tweaks where I look 30 degrees to the left and all of a sudden it's there and it's clear for me. So Kat's saying these are good things to think about, how to move up in her goals. And she's been asked to put together a 5-year plan, but she hasn't taken it seriously as I should. And giving them more of what they think, what she thinks they want to hear versus spending some time thinking about what you actually want. All right. Well, it sounds like they're eager to hear where you want to go and develop and contribute at that company, Kat. So it's absolutely an opportunity for you to influence, get consistent, ask for what you want, and not be afraid. So, yeah. Well, if you're interested in jumping on a call to talk about this, I'm here for you, and I'll follow up with you guys and see if there's anything else I can help you on this topic. And it's just been wonderful to talk to you about this today. So if you know anyone who's got a fear of talking about money, who doesn't know if they're influencing well or could improve their influence, and doesn't have real clarity and a plan for how to go about activating their potential to get that raise and promotion, send them my way. I'd love to have a talk with them. Thank you all, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.